And I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm hoping everyone gets just tons of information out of this. And we're going to kind of dive right in because we have a lot of information to go over tonight. So let's get it jumped off. So who am I and why are you guys listening to me about wholesaling? So that's actually how I gotten started in my real estate career. I started wholesaling at 22 years old. I'm 38 now. So we've been in the real estate investment business for about 15 years. I have an extensive background in property acquisitions, renovating homes, whether it's homes, single family, building, developing townhomes, new construction, apartment renovations. We've remodeled at least over 1,000 doors personally ourselves. Since founding our company, Heaton, Dainard Real Estate, we have completed over 3,000 transactions with investors, wholesalers, just anything that has value add or is sold on and off market properties. So, kind of our niche at Heaton, Dainard Real Estate is being able to underwrite, analyze deals quickly, secure them, and get the capital out immediately. So for all you wholesalers out there, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, we are very dependable buyers. A lot of guys work with us. And they bring us every type of deal because we can give them an offer and they can negotiate it before every one of their appointments. With my business partner, Will Heaton, we also own not only with wholesalers, brokers, and active investors, we're active landlords as well. We have over 1,000 doors in the Pacific Northwest. Again, we're very, very active apartment buyers, and we're looking for more too. So any of you wholesalers that if you find anything, especially large, we just closed about 75 units at SeaTac. We got another 75 we're trying to close in Auburn. So bring us their deals and we'll make sure that we can get them closed. So how I got started at 22 years old wholesaling. I was a senior in college. I was going to University of Washington, a business school, community college for 2 years, transferred in. And my whole goal out of going to college was just to get my piece of paper. And I was going to go into medical device sales. That's kind of what I saw had major potential. I like the industry. I had interned for an elevator sales guy that was now doing that. And I wanted to get involved. Reason I started wholesaling, I was working at Red Robin. I was making my tips, paying for college. And then what I wanted to do was get my sales experience going and get a jump start on my career. So my senior year in college, I started knocking doors for a local real estate company in Kirkland, Washington that did a lot of foreclosure acquisitions. And they really just, I signed up with them. My business partner, Will, who was actually my roommate at the time, took a job with them. He sold a car to one of the owners. They recruited him. He took the job. And as he started knocking on doors, I was like, well, I want to try this too. I want to get some sales experience in. So I kind of fell into this industry. I had a background in real estate. I had already bought my first property prior to doing this. And I was really interested in investing in kind of just finance and real estate holdings in general. So I thought it was kind of, I get to learn more about real estate and I get to practice sales. From there, they gave me no training and all they did was give me a stack full of leads and say, hey, we want to buy these homes. So for the first year of wholesaling, I knocked 30 to 40 doors a day. 5 days a week. I would literally go to college, get done with college, go out and knock 30 to 40 doors, come back, do my homework, wake up, repeat, do that Monday through Friday. And then I would work 2 16-hour shifts at Red Robin just to pay my bills on the weekends. So my college life was not the most fun experience, but I did get a lot of stuff done and kind of learned. And during that time, for that 1 year, as I'm banging on all these doors, I'm working my butt off, I managed to make $0. I was terrible at it. I got no deals done. I was wasting all my money on gas and I was getting super frustrated. And what I had noticed though, was it came down to not the proper training, right? Like the guys I went to work for expected me to kind of teach myself. I was definitely the youngest guy at that office. I was only 22. Everyone else in there was 30 to 40 years old. And what I had to do was I kind of took a step back in that first year and I saw all this potential because I saw these guys making check after check. They were making $20,000, $30,000 without even buying the house. And, and when you're new and you don't have a lot of capital, you can contract properties and start to make fees and build up your nest egg. but you got to get some deals done. And so when I got to my final month in college, I kind of made the commitment of, hey, I'm going to do this for 6 months more. I'm watching these guys make money. I'm working 3 times harder than them, and I'm not making anything, and I can do this. And so I actually quit my job at Red Robin, so I didn't have that kind of money to fall back on, and I thoroughly trained myself. I researched everything about real estate, about wholesaling, contracts, HUDs, foreclosures, and I learned how to kind of overcome objections and get myself from outside the door, inside the door. And once I did that and gave myself full commitment and got the proper training, I then went from doing 0 deals in 12 months to averaging 5 to 6 deals a month. And went from making $0 to making some pretty good money at 22, 23 years old, to where by the end of my first 12 months, I made almost 350 grand wholesaling for this company. And what had happened is I kind of started falling in love with it, falling in love with real estate, building better systems, figuring out what didn't work, what did work with wholesalers. And then I started buying the properties and kind of going from there. So after my wholesaling career, after I got started, we did that for about 2 years with that company. They actually went in a different direction. And so we kind of parted ways, and me and Will ended up opening our company Invest Now, which is our first individual company we opened. It was an off-market wholesaling commercial contract selling company. And the next thing we know, the whole market crapped out. So we opened our office, and then subprime mortgages exploded literally the next week. And we had to learn how to hustle and sell and retrain ourselves on how to wholesale in a very bad market. And so what that's done is that's given us the skill set to learn how to do this kind of business in a hot market from 2006 to 2008, to a declining market from 2008 to 2010, to a flat market, to the crazy market that we're in now. And so we're very well versed in any kind of market, how to get a deal done, how not to get a deal done, which deals to avoid, which deals to go after. And that experience is invaluable to us. And we're going to talk, or invaluable to there's no way I was able to grow without these life experiences. And so what we're going to do over this presentation is kind of just go over the basics of what we've learned over those past 15 years. So besides wholesalers, who else are we? So we are a licensed real estate brokerage called Heaton, Dainard Real Estate, which we specialize in selling and packaging investment opportunities for investors, to where we know what the right number is. We can help line up their financing. We perform the deal. We put together the construction plan, and then we help them with the disposition. So all we do is we work with investors and have a mass buyer pool that we work with in a lot of long-term clients. We also are hard money lenders. So we finance local wholesalers, investors in Washington state only, on quick closings, where we can fund as little as 48 hours. If you got a good deal and you didn't get that deal funded in 48 hours, we are your guys. We can get that deal funded out. We're wholesalers and off-market acquisition guys through Buck Buys Houses. That's our internal off-market company that we have another partner on. One of our old sales guys we partnered up with about 5 years ago, to where we market to off-market sellers through mailers, phone calls, door knocking, and we secure contracts and then sell them off to our clients. And then also ProjectRE, which is our education resource, which is our newest business that we've been working on for the last year. And that's where we're really just trying to get free information out to people, get investors, wholesalers educated, and get a lot of synergy together, to where we're all working together and kind of building our dreams on the same page. So now that you know who we are and what we do, we're going to talk about getting started in this crazy business. Again, I kind of got started in the wrong way. Well, there's no wrong way to get started, but I could have been a lot more efficient. So why do you get involved in wholesaling? And wholesaling is by far the best way that you can create wealth in real estate without any money, or very, very low capital. So the reason being people do wholesale is that it's a low capital requirement. You know, when I started wholesaling, I maybe had $7,000-8,000 in the bank that I had saved up over time. I didn't have to even use a whole lot of that. Really, my biggest expenditures were gas, business cards, and LLC, and a GPS system. And that was really it. I was working for a company. There's a lot less risk in wholesaling. When you're buying that next investment, you're buying a rental property, you're buying a flip property, you are subject to market conditions. If you have a bunch of capital in a flip, which did happen to me in 2008, I was wholesaling for 2 years. I saved up all my money. I've been flipping homes. I saved up even more money. And then I got caught in the middle of a downturn, and all the money I had made in those 2.5 years working my butt off got wiped out in 6 months. So the advantage of wholesaling is if you don't buy that asset, you don't get subject to the market change. Also, it's a little bit less risky because you can kind of pick the deals that you want to do, and you can sell off the deals that maybe don't quite hit your systems and requirements. The other benefit is you can work your own hours. Being self-employed, I've been self-employed now for almost 20 years. It definitely has its pros and cons. You do get some you get some freedom. You can do what you want. You can also be addicted to the grind, which I'm guilty of, to where I won't stop working, but you can work as little and as much as you want. Another reason, there's less players. And what does that mean? When you're wholesaling, you're dealing with three really core things. You got a seller, you got a closing facilitator, and you got a buyer. Those are three people. You're in and out of the deal. Once the deal's done, you can kind of move on once everybody's done their part. When you're flipping homes, you're dealing with brokers, wholesalers sourcing the deal. You're dealing with sellers. You're also dealing with contractors. You're dealing with cities. You're dealing with permits. You're dealing with lenders. You're dealing with buyers on the backside. You're dealing with the buyer's broker when you go to sell it. So you're dealing with 3 to 4 times more people than you have to do in wholesaling. So if I look back 15 years ago, wholesaling was actually some of the simplest I had in real estate. It was like I got my car, I could go drive out. It was up to me to go make some opportunity. And whether it happened or not, I didn't have a lot of people to deal with. And it was just a very simple way to live. I actually sometimes wish I was kind of back in that bucket. But it's a way that you can kind of keep things moving forward. Another benefit out of wholesaling, you get free education. If you have very little experience in real estate, which most of us do when we're getting started, like again, when I started wholesaling, I had no comprehension of what real estate really was, besides you could buy a house or land and make money as an investment or long-term hold. You get to see every little detail what's going on, right? So like closing a deal, you get to figure out what titles and escrows are. You get to work with purchase and sales. You get to work with investors to see how they're doing and what deals they've done well on and what deals they didn't do well on. The more you wholesale, the more friendly you can become with your investors. Is you can go look at their project. What pros and cons did they have out of buying that deal? Was that the right deal for them to buy? If you also get to learn about construction. You may have thought it was 50,000 on the budget. It was really 100,000. Why? And then learn that information and then implement it into your investment platform. And the best thing you can do is build up your capital. When I was wholesaling young, the best thing I could do was save my money, put it aside, and reinvest it. And that's really how I built my wealth today. I did it in 2006 to 2008, had to restart in 2009, and I did it again from 2009 to 2012. And wholesaling built what we have today, saving our money, making a check, reinvesting it. So what is wholesaling? Wholesaling is actually defined as the sale of commercial paper. And so why do I point that out, and why is that so important? The reason I point that out is because even back when we were just wholesalers back in the day, we got hit by the state and they say, hey, if you need to be a licensed real estate broker to sell property. We went through the board, they tried to fine us, then they pulled their fine and said, actually, we're in compliance. Why? Because we're not real estate brokers. We're not selling property. We are selling contracts. When you are working as a wholesaler, you're not selling a property. You are selling the exclusive rights to purchase that property. So you are selling commercial paper. That is very important that you understand that if you ever have to deal with the state, because the state does like to get involved sometimes. Also, make sure you work with your attorney and put all the right paperwork together so you can actually do it in a conforming way. It's the sale of commercial paper. It's a direct sale with the seller to a wholesaler, which then sells it to investors. Typically, there's not brokers involved. How it works is you get a signable contract and you assign it to the investor for what they're willing to pay. So the goal is to purchase that property below what an investor will pay and then assign him for the difference. Once you assign that contract to an investor, once you sign the contract, you always assign the contractor to an investor prior to closing. So again, you find the seller, you contract it, you put no money down besides your earnest money, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you get to sell it to an investor, make a profit, and essentially flip it without putting any really capital into the game. And so the difference between what the investor is willing to pay and what you contract for is what the assignment fee is. So again, wholesaling is contracting a house, selling it to an investor, collecting the difference in the middle. It's essentially wholesaling or flipping a house without doing the work. So who are the key players in wholesaling? The biggest players are the three. You got a homeowner, you got yourself, a wholesaler who's facilitating the sale, contract, negotiating the terms, and then the investor who's going to close that property and actually fund that deal. The other players involved that are also very important is your escrow and title company. They're going to facilitate the exchange of funds in the property title at the same time. So they're also going to collect your assignment fee. They're going to disperse it out, and they're going to grant that deed to the end buyer. And then you handle the move out from there. Lawyers are also another player in the game. A lot of times sellers want to have a lawyer review, depending on what contract you're using, whether you're using a licensed real estate broker's contract or your own contract. There may be review periods. You are going to have an attorney draft up your agreements and contracts. And also, you might have an attorney handle the escrow and closing for you. Or if you're working with a seller that maybe needs some paperwork done, like a probate filed or a will created, these lawyers can kind of help get that deal closed out for you. And another key player that's involved in these transactions are the lenders. How is the end investor that you're purchasing your deal on that you've been working on for so long for? How are they involved? What are they going to be doing? Who they are, and then how are they going to fund it? Also, people that you need to know about is, does that lender require appraiser? That's another person, or a third-party inspection to go look at it, because that's another person in the deal. So when you're wholesaling properties, these are kind of your six main people. The three main are the homeowner, the wholesaler, investor, and then the facilitator are the escrow, the lawyer, and the lender. So it's a very simple process, guys. It really comes down to hard work and understanding the numbers. And from there, the process is simple. A homeowner, you find a homeowner off market, maybe they reach out to you via your own marketing, they want to sell for $250,000. You know your investor will pay $270,000 based on the return. They're looking for X amount of return, or they're looking for this kind of rental property. You contract that property with the homeowner for $250,000. You sell it for the investor for $270,000 on an assignable contract, and you collect the difference of the fee. So on this one, you would make 20 grand. So how does it get to that process, and what's the flow chart, or kind of what's the flow on it? So the first thing you do as a wholesaler is you go out and you identify an off-market property. You're going to negotiate terms with that seller based on what you think you can sell it to an investor for. During that time, in the terms that you're negotiating, you're going to negotiate your feasibility timeline. How long do you have to place that deal? How long do you have to do an inspection on it? What's your outs on the contract in case you contract a bad deal? As soon as you negotiate those terms, you always contract it with an assignable contract that needs to be referenced in the addendum. Then you market it to investors and buyers that you maybe work with, or maybe it's just one big one. You then, once the investor commits, they sign the assignment contract, you send them over all the paperwork. Then you still stay involved, help facilitate to make sure the seller shows up to closing, the buyer shows up for closing, and then you're on to the next deal, right? So it's a very simple process, but there's many steps along the way. So as you're getting started in wholesaling and you start that kind of flow process, there's some key tools that you need to have involved in your kind of your business model, right? So the tools that we use as wholesalers, and you guys, again, we're very active wholesaling guys. So in the last 15 years, we've nearly wholesaled 2,000 properties. Typically, we do about 100, 120 deals a year. So the tools that we use to get these deals is as you're starting your business, you need to find a dependable data source. That could be, we'll talk about a few on the road, but that's someone that's going to provide you with your seller list, also provide you with a buyer list. You need the correct contracts and forms. Don't do whatever you can on the internet, because every state's laws and regulations are different. So if you're downloading a purchase and sale from Arizona and I'm in Washington, that's going to be completely different. Actually, I did just buy a house in Arizona with a flipper, and it was a ton of paperwork. It was completely different than what I'm used to looking at in Washington. Same general process, but different paperwork. So make sure you have the right forms. You need to get a website built. That can be done very cheaply. You need a CRM system. You're going to trap your leads and how you're in a database for your follow-up. You're going to need to have a website. You want to have brick and mortar. Some wholesalers, and there's no right or wrong way you can do this. It's more about how you want to market. Some guys like just the Johnny on the spot kind of roamer guy with a business card, and that's all he has, and he's just a buyer. If that works for you, go that route. If you want to be more professional, which we do, we created a brand that can market out to buyer sellers, is our website. In that website, it traps all the leads that we need. You're going to need a locator system. What does that mean? That's a way to track down people's information, phone numbers, emails, addresses, errors, anything that you need to do to find that deal. Because typically, guys, the harder it is to find somebody, the better deal it's going to be because they have less people calling them. You need to have a marketing put together. That's your marketing print. In a way that you're going to market out to buyers, whether it's digital, it can be print, it can be through phones. And then lastly, you need a dependable buyer pool or a big buyer to eat up your deals. So these are all things that you're going to need to get going inside your business to be successful in wholesaling. The teams to build, right? Because not only do you have to have these systems, you got to have the right people supporting these systems. So the stronger your core team is, the better systems you can be to create to scale, right? So how did I go from knocking doors by myself with a stack of papers to all of a sudden running 6 businesses where we're doing over $150 million in transactions with $100 million in loans a year and flipping over 300 homes with our clients a year? You do that with the right team and the right people. If you go find the cheapest, most thrifty, newest people, you're going to have a lot of kinks in your system, which doesn't allow you to grow. So each member plays a very pivotal role. So people you need on your team to have a successful data source, successful wholesaling company, again, is the right data source. You need an investor-friendly escrow company that knows what you're doing, not a normal one where they're used to dealing with brokers, traditional lenders, and standard closing timeframes. You need to find somebody that understands wholesaling, that understands cash transactions, they understand timeframes. You need a real estate broker that understands what you're doing to help you with the analysis of each property. You know, as brokers and the wholesalers we work with, we can give all the comparables to our wholesalers prior to them even going to their appointment. So by them working with us as licensed brokers, we're giving them as-is comps and fixed up comps so they know their numbers before they even walk in the door. You need a good real estate lawyer because in any real estate deal, things come up. You need paperwork created. You might need some closing addendums. You might need some stuff with probate. You might get sued at some point. Have that person on your bench. You always need a dependable lawyer. And then again, you need that dependable buyer that can close up your deals. So what are CRM systems and why use them? You know, for us, when I got started in the business, it was very simple, right? We had a stack full of papers, right? We just had everything in foreclosure on a list, and then we would scrub through it. And it was as simple as we would print out our route and write notes on it for a month. And then we tear out the ones that were dead at that point. So it was before CRM was a big deal. So back in the old day when I was walking in the snow to get to my work, so it was as simple as that. And then we would log it into our website once a month with all the notes in there. It had no follow-up. It had no auto reminder. I just had to do everything by memory. Nowadays, what we use, which is much more efficient, is there's a lot of different CRM systems that you can mark you can load your leads into, you can load all their phone numbers into, and then you can classify them to when to follow up with them. Follow-up is key in this business. I have lost countless amounts of deals because of lack of follow-up. I may be talking to a seller for 2 years, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, I don't call the guy for 3 months. Someone calls me and they contracted that deal. They called them at the right time. So follow-up is key. So the point of a CRM system, and 3 ones that we use or we've used over the years, is Follow Up Boss, Podio, and Salesforce. There's tons of them out there. You got to figure, there's like Boomtown, figure out what works for you inside your systems, but they all have their pros and cons in there. So you need them to organize your leads. The other thing you can do is record your calls to where you can listen to yourself. Why aren't you doing well on the phone? You can bring it to your coach if you have a coach and say, hey, look, I've dialed out 2,000 people. I've got 0 appointments. That's a problem with your sales pitch and how you're calling. So recording those calls, digging back through them. It gives you a dialing system, when to call people, how to call out quickly, and it also gives you that follow-up system so you don't lose that deal. So now you guys, that we kind of covered the basics of wholesaling, right? Like we covered what you need, who you need on your team, what kind of paperwork that you need. what kind of systems you need to make yourself successful. And by all means, guys, you can keep this as simple, as complex as possible. I kind of fly in the middle, right? Like we like to keep it simple, not overthink the marketing, but we also need a good database for our guys to be able to follow up in. So it's really important that you kind of get all these things put together before you go out there and just start knocking on doors and cold calling people. Because if you jump to it and just start getting in front of deals and you're not organized, you may have got in front of the right deal at the wrong time a week too early, and you didn't have this correct follow-up, and then you just missed it down the road. So make sure you get set up right and then put the system in play. So now what we're going to talk about is paperwork and forms. And you guys, real estate, I almost feel like this has been overlooked nowadays in the current market that we're in. The purpose of a contract is to outline how the transaction is going to go. It's not only going to outline it, you're signing and committing to that contract. So having the right contract and form is fundamentally important. If you have the wrong contract and you have the greatest deal in the world, and you put it on the wrong contract, and you don't have the right disclaimer in there, you don't have the right legal description in there, someone can jack your deal. And not only that someone can, someone will at some point. Trust me, if I'm sitting with a seller and they've signed some one-page BS contract, and they're like, yeah, I don't really know the guy, he doesn't have any money, he's a wholesaler, and it's not a real contract, and we can pay him a lot more, we're going to let the seller know that. And now at the end of the day, it's up to the seller, whatever he wants to do. But people are going to try to get that deal. So make sure your contract is locked up correctly. So what you need to be able to do to make sure that your deal doesn't get stolen, and not only that, that keeps you in legal compliance, is you need a correct purchase and sale. We use the Northwest MLS or the MLS purchase and sale. You can also, and then we also have a customized purchase and sale for off-market transactions. It's very simple. We had an attorney create our customized one, which is actually set up more for any kind of distress situation because it has the correct disclaimers in it. But at the end of the day, it still has the same core information. In the purchase and sale, it needs the buyer, the seller, the purchase price. It needs the actual legal description. In Washington State, if you don't have the full legal description put on the contract, it is not binding. Let me say that again. If you don't have the full legal description attached to your contract, it is not binding, and someone will steal that deal. I've had so many deals stolen from me over the years because of incorrect contracts by guys that were brought to me. You got to make sure that your deal is, you got to make sure that you have an assignment form. So once you have that contract, how do you transfer the rights to that contract to your buyer, right? What forms are they signing? What commitments do they have? What feasibility and what obligations do they have to you? So that assignment contract is very important. You want to make sure you have your proper disclaimers in it to your sellers and your buyers. If you don't disclaim things or, disclose things correctly, you can get sued. You will need that real estate attorney on your bench. So make sure if you're dealing with any kind of protected class when you're wholesaling, that you have the right disclosures in. In Washington State, you're dealing with any kind of foreclosure property, which, we don't typically target very much, but guys that bring us contracts on them, you have to have the distressed homeowner law inside your contract in a 16-point font, or your contract's not valid. So it goes over everything. So make sure you have those things. And then also what we have too is we like to have an LLC sales agreement, because sometimes, some sellers will not sign an assignable contract. They're okay with an investment company bringing investment partners, but they do not want to do and/or signs. So what some wholesalers do is they actually structure it in a blank LLC, and they sell the units to the LLC prior to closing rather than assigning it out. Okay. The reason you guys want to do assignment forms, make sure these are correct, because if you try wholesaling and you do the double close method, which there's nothing wrong with that, and that's where a wholesaler comes in, they contract it, and then they close it with a hard money loan, turn around, sell it to the investor the next day, they get paid off. They got to account for all the excise tax, the closing costs, and lending costs, and that can eat up 30 to 40% of your assignment amount just by not having the right paperwork in line. So what you want to do is reach out to your attorney, figure out what contracts need to be in your state, and then get those built out. When you're signing your contracts, after you've had your forms and you're negotiating with your sellers, you need to make sure that you have the right structured terms to make sure that you can be successful on closing that deal out. So what kind of terms do you need in that contract? You need to make sure that there's an and/or signs clause in there signed by the seller. The reason being is if the contract's not assignable, you can't assign it, you can't wholesale it. So that needs to be in there. You need to make sure it references earnest money deposit. A contract is not binding until consideration has been met. That's done through earnest money. So the way to do it in wholesaling, or a lot of guys do it, there's two ways you can do it. You either can get the earnest money, deposit it in once you sign it at a low amount. Sometimes people do thousands, sometimes people do 5,000. If you're competing against guys like us, we offer like 20 to 50,000. So better be a larger. Or you can do no money pocket, like you know, a promissory note. When you property, offer property, sell that, sign, then lose their spot. Um, so the other thing it needs in there is a closing date. What is going on? When does it need to be closed? You need to be able to educate your buyers on when that closing. Plus, you can't sign a contract that's open-ended, so have the date in there. You need to reference possession. That can make a big difference on whether that investor is going to buy that deal or not. Especially during times of the pandemic where you couldn't evict people. No one wanted to buy a wholesale deal that had some bad tenant in that they were trying to flip, right? You couldn't get the people out. The debt cost would destroy the deal. So you need to make sure that you reference what the possession is or when the move out is in there. And if you are doing a delayed possession, what's the process? What is there a deposit held back? And is the seller going to be charged for that deposit or on a daily rate if they're not on time? So your investors not get blasted. And lastly, make sure you got your legal description in there, or it's not binding, at least in Washington. So you guys, here's an example of an assignment contract. This is a deal that we assigned out just, I think it was last year. But what it does in there, it references who the assigner is. It's referencing all the fees that are getting paid on this, right? So like in this assignment fee, $12,000 was paid to one entity, 12,000 was paid out to the sales rep, and then 8,000 was done as earnest money reimbursement, because that's referenced because our entity, Buckwise Houses, had already put down $8,000 cash for the earnest money. So all fees and earnest money reimbursements are all listed on this assignment agreement. And in the bottom, you can also see it's got a disclaimer, disclaimer and release of claims. This is the buyer and the investors releasing us from all claims that they've done all their due diligence, that we gave them the package and they're buying it on their own accord. That's a very important thing too, guys, because sometimes someone could say they love the deal, they want it, they want to fight you to get it so bad, and then they get it and they don't want it anymore, and they want to give it back. It doesn't make any sense. So make sure that everyone's signing commitment and that you are completely done with that deal once that deal is closed. So now that we kind of gone over the right paperwork, which again, you guys start with the right nuts and bolts, make sure you're contracting things are the right thing. How do you find the right sellers to actually contract? Which is again, really, really important when you're working with on wholesaling, right? If you go out with the goal of just driving and knocking doors, you're going to waste a ton of time. And part of that first year that I made no money in is because I was targeting the wrong sellers. Yes, I worked for a company that bought foreclosure properties. They gave me a stack of foreclosure leads. There was a lot of foreclosures back then. So I was just driving with no purpose and knocking on everything with a foreclosure. A lot of those homes weren't supposed to be sold or weren't going to be sold. They were in too good a shape. The people took care of their property. They just had a quick hardship and they were back to normal, right? Whereas what we knew is the ones that we were usually buying were the ones that needed a lot of work. They were abandoned. And we took that data list and we narrowed it down, right? And we shrunk that box. That's where I started becoming successful. I wasn't trying to hit everything. I was trying to hit a finite list. So hitting that right sellers is really important. So types of sellers that we target and that are very popular for most wholesalers, it's a matter of how you kind of interpret and narrow this list down, are vacant homes, transitioning homeowners. Are they moving out of state? Motivated sellers. So motivated sellers are foreclosure people, maybe people that they inherited a property. Maybe they have an eviction going on and they want to get rid of that property and get the people out. Do they have an equity position sellers? How long have they owned the property for? Did they buy it 5 years ago and they made 100% on their money and maybe they can get into a better house and they haven't even realized it? Or maybe they bought a fixer and they want a newer house and they have a lot of equity now. So equity position's a big deal. Another reason equity position is a good way to narrow your sellers down is because if they owe 80% of what it's worth. You can't buy that deal. There's no way you're gonna be able to make a margin on that. So it shrinks down who you're calling. Um, Estates and trusts are another people that we target. Is it in a estate? Is it in a trust? How do you get that information quickly? Building condition is another one. Poor, average, fair. You can kind of narrow your condition down to those three, and then let the other like three go away, because it just helps narrow your buy box. And you guys, just building condition 2 isn't updated too well in the city. There's been plenty of homes that I bought that were almost tear downs that were rated as average. There's been plenty of homes that I bought that were in really good shape that were rated as fair. So it's just a way to kind of narrow it down. Length of ownership is a big deal. We do spend some time in demographics. What kind of sellers? When do they want to sell? Have they owned it for 20 years and it's a large home and they need to transition to a smaller home? So another type of seller. And then deferred maintenance is another one. It's a big type of seller that we chase, and that could be, they could have a abatement lien on their property. It could be overgrown. It could be, we could see a trash notice. It could be a city code violation that they're not taking care of the property and the city's finding them. So those are all types of things that we like to kind of target on our sellers. So how do you get the information out of these people? And you guys, we have a pretty complex system that we use. We scrub our data pretty heavily. I'd say probably deeper than most, but there's easy ways to get data, there's cheap ways to get data, and then there's harder ways to get it, and more expensive ways. So the best way to do it is to get it from the cheapest way to get it is from your title company. If you work with the right title rep, and that goes back to having that team I was talking about, you get a title rep that understands what you're doing. They have searching systems where they can pull you pretty generic lists and at least get you started. And it's very inexpensive. Typically, your average list can cost you like 13 to 15 bucks, maybe 20, to where you can give them qualifications. They'll kick out a list. Third-party providers, those are going to be stuff like List Source, Property Radar, CoreLogics, Black Knight. Those guys can also help you source data through there. They cost a little bit more. Public information, if you're looking for foreclosures, those are all public information. Estates, public information. So you can set up trapping systems to pull that free information so when the foreclosures are going. There's also foreclosure websites out there you can grab. And then lastly, which is kind of an expensive way, but it does work, is data scientists. They can take this huge bucket of sellers and shrink that down based on different qualifications to where you're working with an optimal list. This can be fairly expensive though, to where you'll be spending anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000, $40,000 a year on this data. So you got to make sure you have your systems in place if you want to go that route. It is good for mass coverage on like call centers and just getting in front of people. So now that we talked about sellers, what kind of sellers, where you can get the general information from, and you guys, we are going over kind of, this class is set up to go over the general principles of wholesaling. We are going to be offering a course down the road. It's going to be extremely inexpensive. It's going to be probably in the summer, to where we're going to go really granular through these things. We'll talk about that more. Again, the whole point of this course is to give you guys the basics of what's going on. So finding the right investors, right? So we've talked about the sellers, which sellers you can narrow that list down for. Then we have to go after, you got to find those sellers. Finding the right seller or finding the right investor is almost as difficult. It actually can be even more difficult than finding the right buyer. It depends on what market you're in, right? I know the last couple of years, actually last 5 years, been a little crazy, where it's like, some wholesalers, they get lucky, right? It's like when there's low inventory, people are frivolously buying. But when there's a market shift, and there's always a market shift, right? I mean, since I've been in this business, I've seen a market crash, I've seen 2 flat markets, and I've seen extremely important, I've seen 2 highly appreciating markets. 2007 was extremely high appreciating. This is just unreal with what's going on with the appreciation right now. But you're always going to see different markets. So if you want to have a business that lasts, you need to be prepared to build in any kind of market. So right now, finding investors is relatively easier. Well, no, finding an investor can be easy. Finding the right investors can be difficult, right? So types of investors that you can find, and there's good ones and bad ones. And you guys trust me, I've sold over 4,000 homes to investors. Or over 3,000 homes to investors. It can be painful if you pick the wrong one. So types of investors out there, there's large investment companies like Heaton, Dainard Real Estate, or the one that I went to work for 2 years ago when I first started. The benefit of these is they're large, they're professional, they do what they say they're going to do, and then they have the capital to fund any type of deal. Not only that, most of them, including us, if you send us a deal and say, hey, I'm going to meet out with the seller, what's the max price you'll pay? They're going to give you, we underwrite properties at the same margin on each house, right? So for us, it's the same number each time. We're going to give you that number that we're going to like a range. Like we could be saying, hey, we can buy this from 480 to 510, depending on condition, get us pictures and we'll let you know. So as a wholesaler, you can go out there and negotiate your spread up front and know that you have someone that's big and has the capital to fund that deal. So large investment companies are good. There's rental buyers. Those type of buyers are a lot of times they're looking for value add. They're looking for the burr properties. Or they're just looking for a traditional rental property that might be a little bit cleaner. Depending on the type of rental buyer, whether it's a burr investor or a traditional investor, that's going to depend on how they can close your deal too. So you want to make sure you know what kind of rental buyer they are. Some use conventional financing, some use hard money. So make sure you know that. Developers, right? Are you going to sell land? What kind of developers are working out there? Large plat developers, small infill developers. So those are different types of buyers that will buy different types of deals. There's hedge funds out there buying rental properties, that they're buying clean homes at almost 90% of value, and you can sell them off rental properties. People that buy the foreclosure auction, we like those, right? They're people that make quick decisions. They're at the auction bidding with cash to buy a house. They can make a decision quickly. There's estate and trust investors, right? Where there are ways that you can go in, find these people because they're buying in a trust. There's flippers, there's length of ownership, there's builders, right? And these are all very searchable things, right? Like if I want to go find auction buyers, I can look at who buy trustee deeds, or if they're looking for hedge funds, I can look at who bought over 50 homes in that year, right? So there's different ways that you can pull these people out through data points. So investor demand, right? You can have all the investors in the world, but if you're finding them deals that they don't want, you have zero investors. It doesn't matter how big your buyer list is if the buyer list can't execute. So as you're working with these buyers, find out what is the demand. Who are the big buyers in your market? What we like to do, and we do this as a brokerage or we do it for ourselves, is we like to reverse engineer the targeting, right? This last couple of years, I've been working with a lot of very large developers. They came into Washington, and what we did is we didn't say, hey, we're going to go find you a deal. We found out what deals they wanted to buy, and we reverse prospected for that. And that got our conversion rate up by 5 times the amount, right? So if you're in Washington and you're looking for a big buyer, come call me, and I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what we're looking in these 3 counties. We're looking for this kind of product, this kind of margin. We can buy in all 3 areas, so you know what we're looking for, and then you can target those kind of leads, so your conversion rates go way up. So you want to find out who your largest buyers are, what product are they looking for, so you can work smarter. Target the right houses. Don't go find any house because someone's going to sell it to you. Find the stuff that people want to buy, and then really target what types of product these investor demands want. As you're talking to people, if you talk to 100 investors, and they all look for single family rental houses, then you know what you need to market to. You can yank multifamily off your list. You can yank development off your list. You can yank apartments off your list, and you can just go after that. So if you know the product, that helps you narrow your target list. And also find out if you know what product that they actually want. Like if you have, like right now, I have a property. I'm looking for a multifamily in the east side for my own self, right? I want to have an apartment here when I'm working on some of my projects. Because I want that so bad, and if you're a wholesaler in Washington, I'm going to buy that at a way slimmer margin than your investor over here, right? So if you know what product they want, they'll pay you more for it. And then, in that, because you have an investor that's going to pay more, you can convert higher and get more deals done. That's a lot of reason why we can do 100 to 150 deals a year, is because we're not just going after every deal. We're going after the right deals that our investors actually want. We're actually converting and finding what they want. So after you kind of find out who they are, find out what they want, you need to vet these people too, right? If you talk to a lot of real estate professionals, they're always going to tell you what you want to hear. Oh, I can get that loan done. I can sell that house for you. I can do this. But they're just doing that to get the business in the door. Investors will do the same thing. I tons of people call me up and say, hey, James, I'm looking for some deals. You guys have been doing deals for a long time. I'm like, oh, what kind of property are you looking for? I want them all. You don't want them all. If you wanted them all, that doesn't make any sense, right? It's like they have construction teams that can do a certain amount of stuff. They have financing to do a certain amount of things. They have certain return expectations they have. That statement alone always makes me take someone very not serious unless I know how much they buy. So find out what they're looking for. The first thing you want to ask them, and these are questions we ask every investor, is how do they pay for properties? Oh, I want to get a loan. Well, we're writing up our offers all cash with no financing contingency, so that's not going to work for us. What kind of loan do you need? Oh, I'm using a hard money loan. That's okay. Oh, I'm using my bank. Not going to be okay. We don't allow any bank financing on any off-market deal we do. It causes hiccups. It goes against what we're telling the seller, which is we're giving you an all-cash convenient close. That's why they're selling it for a discount. So it just doesn't go well. We won't accept it. The other thing, if they say, I got a hard money lender, is it hard money or is it soft money? Hard money, guys, is expensive, but it moves fast, right? Like an interest funding, we can fund your deal in Washington in 48 hours. You call me and say, hey, I need this done. You send us title paperwork. We're going to underwrite that. We do all the underwriting in-house, and we're going to have that funded for you with no risk. Use soft money guys, which are the 6 to 8%, or I'd say 7 to 9% lenders. They still need appraisals. I told the seller we're not doing an appraisal. It's not subject to financing. Not only that, if that appraisal comes in low, which there's a lot of variances in comps, right? There's as-is comps and fixed up comps. So that appraiser blows it on that deal, which happens all the time, which at interest funding we love because we have to fund their deals last minutes. But that's going to screw up your deal and you could lose your wholesale fee because they can't perform. So you want to know how they're paying for it. How quick can they close? Oh, it takes me 2 weeks. That tells me they're getting an appraisal. Call me, I can close in 48 hours. That's a real cash buyer, right? And you're asking people to do this so you can narrow who you're actually sending your deals to. You don't want to send everybody. That's a huge mistake. Plus, they'll steal them. They'll go knock on the door, screw up your whole pitch. Find out what projects they've done. The reason we ask that is like if I'm talking to an investor and they're going, well, hey, I've done 12 projects. I'm like, perfect. What kind of projects? Where are they at? Can I get some addresses? And I pull every one of them up and they're all built in 1980s and they're cosmetic turns. I know not to waste my time and bring them some messed up studs down renovation house because that's not what they do, right? They've never bought that before. They're an investor for cosmetic deals. They're not investor for every type of house. So it's really important. And the more you know what they can perform on, the less hiccups you're going to have in your walkthroughs. You want to find out what kind of areas they like. Where are they most aggressive? I'm a King County buyer. We buy King, Snohomish, Pierce. I love King. I also, parts of Snohomish as well. I will be way more aggressive in certain parts of King than I will in Pierce County. It's just the way I work. And it's also because how my construction teams are set up. So make sure you find out where they want. Do they have a construction background? Can they do heavy fixers or do they just need light fixers? That's going to tell you how not waste time by trying to sell a deal that's not good for them. And are they actual investors? You hear that word daisy or that term daisy chain. Are they a real buyer or are they just a wholesaler trying to wholesale your deal? You don't want your deal floating around town, guys. It's terrible. When people send me deals that have been floated around town, the deal's stale. Nobody wants it. The perception from investors like, well, everybody's seen this. No one wants it. It's not a good deal. Your off-market sizzle that makes things easy to sell things is now gone. And not only that, you did it because you let a bunch of people that don't know anything about the property try to sell it. So, wholesaling doesn't work that well when you have a wholesaler trying to wholesale, right? Like it just doesn't go well. So are they actual investors if they're committing to you? And they can be a wholesaler, but they can still give you commitment. And if they can't wholesale it, they're buying it. So you got to get investment and money out of them. So make sure that they're actually real people. Don't let them stale out your deal. All right, now that we've covered buyers, sellers, data, kind of systems, now we're going to talk about how do you market, right? How do you give yourself that brand, that feel that either sellers and buyers want to work with you on? And you guys got to think of that too, right? It's not just about what it's good for a seller, it's also what's good for a buyer or vice versa. So general things that you need to do to get your business going. You need to get a logo set up. You can do that for very, very little money, guys. And you know what? You don't have to. Some guys, again, they like to leave the paper with just their name, that I'm just this roaming investor guy. If that's the way you want to go, probably don't need a logo. I'm a brick and mortar guy. So, we have a logo, right? We have Buck Buys House logo with its own brand. People know what it is. We've put it on billboards. We have internet marketing. So when people see the logo, they kind of know what it is right away. Plus, it makes it look like a reputable company that's been in business. And so when you're a reputable company, you have reviews, you have a logo, you have a website, and you're going and selling against a different person, your infrastructure, a lot of times people will sign with you just based on that. You need to have a general website with lead trapping. You guys get the website up, but make sure you can trap leads. It does you no good if people are clicking on it and you can't get their information. SEO in the era we're in now, and we've been definitely incorporating this a ton the last 2-3 years in our business. Wasn't a thing when I was knocking doors. Is SEO, right? Like, how do you get people reaching out to you? The best kind of lead that you can get is someone saying, I want you to come look at my house to buy. That's a direct deal, right? You're going out there, it's all negotiating at that point. Whereas a lot of what wholesalers are doing, we're trying to get them interested in selling and then selling for a discount. So SEO kind of takes care of half that process. You need a postcard template. How do you drop mail? What works well? What doesn't work well? A letter template. Some of our letters do really well, some do really bad, right? So we know what letters work well, what gets us the best phone calls. We know what postcards work well. The big difference between postcards and letters. Letters are more impactful. Postcards are good for volume. They cost about 1/3 as much as a letter, so you can get more volume out, but they're not quite as impactful. But have the magic ones that they get people to call, right? Does it route them to a website? They can trap their information. Do you want your letter to just feel handwritten? So they're calling a kind of a person to person. And then also have business cards, right? Like it's kind of like that movie American Psycho when the guy's going over his business card back and forth. You have the infrastructure, right? You want people to be able to call you, leave it with them, right? And it just, again, makes you look professional. If you're working with some older sellers, guys, they don't want to work with just some random Joe Schmo. They want to feel good about it. Not only with the marketing and getting yourself set up, then there's different types of contacts, right? Like, how do you make your contacts in marketing? So there's kind of really two different ways to do it. There's expensive ones, and then there's low cost ones. How I got started was all low cost, right? I had a stack of forms. I went out, banged on doors. I think gas at the time was a lot cheaper than it is now. So, if I guess I was driving doors right now with the price of gas, it would cost a lot more. But back then, I'd fill up my tank every 4 days. It was $50, and I go out and knock doors. Wasn't that expensive. The company I worked for provided me with all the information, so I didn't have a lot of cost there. Door knocking is very low cost. Cold calling, low cost. You're sitting there and dialing. Pay your cell phone bill. Pay for your CRM system. It's not a big expenditure. You're going to spend maybe $200 a month on cold calling. Driving, not counting, tracking your numbers. Driving for dollars. This does work, guys. A lot of our guys do really well this way. They just, as they're driving, if they're going out to an appointment, they see a beat up old house, get out of that car, make a point to go just introduce yourself. Find out if they have any interest in selling at that point. Paid contacts, which can cost a lot more. Google AdWords, that's going to be kind of expensive. You can do organic or non-organic. You can do click to. It can become a very expensive thing to get your name to the top of Google, guys. Be prepared to spend some serious money if you want to be at the top. Postcards, pretty cheap. Cost me about 30 cents a postcard. Direct mail, 40 cents a letter mailed out. Call centers. Call centers are good for volume. You can get guys calling $8 to $10 an hour. The negative is there are overseas, so it doesn't go well on all of them, but it is good for coverage, right? Like, hey, are you interested in selling, catching the person at the right time? And then just straight lead purchasing, which is, again, very expensive, but the conversion rate can be pretty good. Typically, on average, to buy a lead of a good actual appointment, it's going to cost you anywhere between $200 and $400, depending on the quality. If it's less than 100, guys, probably not a good lead. Trust me, we've tried it. So as you're contacting these people, right? Like we've talked about, you can pay for it, you can do it cheap, and if you're getting new guys, I'm a firm believer knocking doors is the best way to do it. If I had enough time and didn't have other things going on, that's all I would do is knock doors. Plus, I kind of liked hanging out in my car, roaming the earth, interacting with people. But as you're marketing these people, you need to make sure you stay out of trouble, right? There is laws, rules, and regulations that you need to follow. If you don't follow them, they can be very expensive and very painful. So things that you need to do before you start calling out: scrub your list through the do not call list. Litigators. There's also a list that you can scrub your list against the litigators. There's websites you can use for that. They want your money, guys. There's professional litigators hanging out in these data lists waiting for you to call. And if you call them, it will cost you $5,000 to $10,000. You will not win on that. They are professionals. They know what they're doing, and they're going to tell you exactly what they're doing. They're going to say, you broke these laws. I'm going to file all these lawsuits, or I'm going to settle right now for $5,000 or $7,000 or $8,000. And I got called by one of those about 8 years ago. So 7 years ago, we learned our lesson. Call my attorney and say, this guy's trying to shake me down. He's like, I'd just pay him. You're not going to win. So we had to cut a check for $8,000. We did learn a valuable lesson. So make sure you do that. And then also, guys, make sure you stay away, or not stay away from protected class, but you handle them with care and due diligence and do the right steps on that. If you're dealing with distressed property, guys, you need, like, if they're in foreclosure, you need to make sure that you give them a fair shake. You are putting you're adhering to the laws. Like in Washington State, they have a distressed homeowner law, where if you let that person stay in that house, or you try to lease it back to them, or let them stay, even technically you're supposed to be paying them, I think it's 80% of value. If you don't do that, and then they make a complaint during your contract or after closing, you will be paying them 80% of closing, which is going to be a big bill on you. So make sure you're doing it correctly. Also, you guys, if you're working with any kind of elderly seller, or even somewhat impaired, you need to run that through an attorney. You know, when we're dealing with anybody that's transitioning, maybe an old folks home, or even if it's a family, we want to make sure we're dealing with all the heirs in the family, or we at least send them over to attorney and bring the heirs in. Make sure you bring everybody in that needs to be in that protected classes. So now that hopefully I kept you out of trouble, and you guys, again, make sure you scrub your list, guys. It's an expensive lesson. It's happened to numerous people I know. We talked about buyers, talk about sellers. How do we market to these sellers? How do you know now that once you found that seller, you got it? How do you know that's a deal, or how do you know what to offer on that property? And how do you know what an investor is going to buy? And so, because you can go through, and this happens a lot with wholesalers, guys. It probably happened to me. The first 6 deals I ever signed up as a wholesaler were short sales. I didn't even know what a short sale was, and I thought I was going to get paid. I never got paid on them. So, they just didn't get approved. So make sure you know what a deal is and not a deal, or work with companies that can help you with that, right? Like, we work with wholesalers, and we send them comps, we send them as-is comps, we send them fixed up comps, we send them budgets, we send them performance. So they have all the information they need to get that deal done. And they also have an offer price from us that we can pay for it with logic back behind it. So the more you know the numbers, the more you can convert, right? I had another wholesaler come into my office. He'd been wholesaling like 5 months. He's like, I can't get a deal done. I want to talk to you about working with you guys. He comes in, we're talking. We're going to give him some data. And he's like, yeah, I just missed this one in Bellevue. And I'm like, well, what was it? He's like, well, I offered him whatever it was like 900. I got outbid at 940. So they're signing that deal right now. And he said, I'm like, what's the address? He's like, well, it's gone. We can't pay that much. I'm like, well, hold on, let me look. I pull it up and I look at him. I go, hey, look, you're going to call this guy and tell him you're going to pay him $975 right now and waive all inspections. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I go, not only that, we can sell this deal for, it's like $1,020,000. So we were both gonna make $25,000 each. So he went from making no deal because he didn't quite underwrite the deal correctly. We packaged it and go, hey, this is the right price for this for an investor buy, which the investor ended up flipping down the road and making money too. So everyone won on that. And he calls the guy right there on the spot. I go, tell him this. He offers it to him. The guy literally has the contract out on hit, like he's going to sign that night. And the guy's like, well, I already kind of gave this guy verbal. And he's like, well, you gave me verbal before you gave him verbal. Let me just drive. Comes up there, drives up there, contracts it, makes $25,000. All because he didn't have the right numbers. Really good sales guy. And so, it's about having the right information. So one thing you can do is go to my YouTube channel, ProjectRE on YouTube. We have a step-by-step underwriting video that's super thorough, in-depth. There's 4 parts on it. They're roughly about 40 minutes each. That will take you through step-by-step on how to underwrite that deal. On a quick format, how do you do it first? The first thing you want to do when you're looking at a property to contract, you need to pull the property details. You need to know, what the property is that you're looking for. So how do you do this? Each geographical location varies, but the principles always remain the same. So I might get data in Washington different than Florida, but what you still want to do is take the right steps. Every area county should have a public assessor website. In Washington, it's kingcounty.gov.org. We can get any tax information off that. We can get all sorts of information from there. We can get topo, we can get building information, all stuff we need to evaluate that property. I'm a licensed real estate broker, so I can also use the Northwest MLS, or if you have a CoreLogics feed, you can get the information from there, or in your local area, you guys partner up with a broker, get that person on your bench. The other thing you do is get it from a third-party site like Property Radar. There's a bunch of them, guys. There's one called Parcels. So all these websites will have the general information. So what is the general information that you're looking for? You're looking for bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, lot size. All those things are going to dictate your offer price. Again, go to my YouTube channel, watch the videos. It will walk you through step by step to how to navigate that tax record. So once you find the information on the property, how do you establish what that property is worth, right? So if you have a 2,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house in Bellevue, Washington, how do you know what it's worth? And how do you know what you need to do it? Establishing values can be very tricky if you're not licensed. And you guys, one thing I do want to say is you don't really want to be licensed. Like if you're a wholesaler, that's not being a broker. You're selling contracts. Remember, real estate brokers sell property. So being a broker sometimes isn't advantageous for being a wholesaler, nor do you need it, but you do need a broker on your bench, right? And so if you're a wholesaler with Heaton Dainard Real Estate, we can be your bench. We can get you your values. We want to work with you guys at Synergy. We can get you your comps. We can get you your calculators. That's what the value of working with a broker is. The other way you can get it is if you have access to the Northwest MLS, use that. You can pull your searches, you can pull your radius, you can narrow down that offer and tighten up your numbers. And you guys, a lot of the deals we get done is because we got our numbers so damn tight. It's a game of, I mean, this is right now with how competitive it is a game of pennies. So whoever stacks their pennies and counts their pennies right is getting that deal. Another way you can establish values is a mentor, right? Like I do mentor some people in the Washington state. If they have deals, we look at them. You need to have a local mentor that also understands your market, right? Like if I'm mentoring some guy in Florida, the reason I keep saying Florida is because I was just out there a bunch. I love Florida. But if he's asking me what I think a house is worth, how am I going to know? Yeah, I'm an investor. I bought a lot of homes. I'm a broker, but I don't know anything about that market as far as value goes. Now I can go over the principles and what to do, and I can look at things and say, hey, this could be hard and not marketable, but I can't tell you exactly what it's worth, right? So establishing that value or that mentor, and that mentor might have relationships in different markets too, but really go back to your real estate broker, the MLS, investor partnerships. Right? If you're working with a really good investor, like, I mean, some of our bigger investors we work with on dirt acquisitions, they just tell us what they're going to build. And we work backwards off that, right? So they already told me what the number is. If you work with Heaton Dainard Real Estate or, me as a buyer, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to sell it for. I'm going to tell you what my middle number is and why I have to buy it for their number I need to buy it for. So I can give you a value, or your investor can. And then also public websites can be indicators too, right, guys? So like, you can go on Zillow. Don't use this estimate. We also saw what happened when they're trying to wholesale properties. Did not go well. You guys can't do it off of. Anyone thinks you can just plug numbers in and wholesale a property and just do magic. Good luck. There's a lot of different variables in there that will mess up your numbers. But you can still go on and check solds. Don't use their estimates stuff. Like you can find houses in the area. Like you're looking at a deal and be like, well, I think I should go out there and look at it. Here's a very similar house right by here, just sold 3 months ago, and you know what it's sold for, and you can see the pictures. So it is helpful in that way. The key factors when you're looking at these properties, again, guys, go to that YouTube video. I really break this down. The things that you need to look at when you're evaluating a property, you just structure your offer. What's the lot size? Is it large? Is it small? Homes on larger lots are selling at a premium right now because of the pandemic. With the with the zoning that goes along with that lot, is that lot worth more? So all these things come into play. Also, you want to know your lot size, because if you're on an acre lot, you want to go find comps that are on maybe 3/4 to an acre and a half lot. If you're on a 5,000 square foot tight lot or zero lot, you need to find comps on a zero lot. And so that's going to tell you what to narrow your comps down to. What's your total living square footage potential? For me, I want to know what's finished, but I want to know what I can build into. A lot of in Seattle, we're building out basements, adding square footage. I want to know what the max value I can put on the house is. What's the bedroom bath count? Location is a huge factor too. Is it on a busy road? Is it under a flight path? That can also kind of screw your numbers. But the other things that you need to look at, the age range, right? When I'm looking at comparables, if I'm looking at a 1960 home, I might look at 1950 to 1979 because those are going to be the same architectural style typically. We're going to look for, as we're pulling our comparables, so we're looking in the right age range, right style code. Then we're looking in the general location. You know, if we're in a metro area, we're not going out a mile to find our comp. We'll do that in rural, but you know, depending on how metro it is, the tighter, the bigger the city, the smaller your radius needs to be. You know, in a couple streets and like some streets in Seattle, Bellevue, East Side, we got to stay within a 2-street buffer or values are going to shift. So know the locations. You know, other things you want to look at in your comparables, right? What kind of schools are they in? What are the negative impacts? Do they have bad neighbors? All these things are going to affect your values. You want to look at your bedroom bath counts. If your comparable has 4 bedrooms, 4 bath, then in your subject property has 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, your rehab budget better be pretty damn big to get it to a 4 bed, 4 bath. So based on what the bedroom bath count variable is going to dictate that middle construction number, which is going to dictate what a buyer can pay. And then other things you want to look at the key factors, what's the quality of renovations, right? If you're wholesaling a property, you can get laughed out of the room by investors or get a bad name. If you're saying, hey, this thing needs $50,000 and this is the comp I use, and the comp that you use has a $40,000 range in it. So know the quality of renovation, know what people need to do. If you really want to sell to an investor, you better package that thing correctly or you're going to shortchange yourself anyways. So how do you figure out these rehab numbers? What are some resources that you can do as you're analyzing, underwriting these deals, right? We talked about how to pull the tax record, how to get the values out of it. How do you come up with that middle rehab number, guys? Because you can find the cheapest deal in the world, but if that rehab number is too big, it won't even matter. So knowing your rehab and that middle number is fundamentally important, or at least working with an investor that knows it, that can tell you it based on logic, right? So when we're working with wholesalers or buyers, or we're even wholesaling something to an investor, we have this thing packaged up to where we give them a budget. We're saying, hey, this property needs $100,000, and here's how we came up with that based on averages, installs, and allowances. So it's very tangible for a wholesaler to look at that and go, yes, I understand how much money you need to put in this. An investor, same thing. Yes, that makes sense. I can take this to my builder and go, hey, is this reasonable? Yes, no. Does it work inside my systems? And we also use it for sellers. When sellers are like, well, I want this much. And we're like, well, look how much money we have to put in this property. You know, here's your as-is comp, and we still got to do all this work. Is there anything wrong with this number? You know, how do we get, like, you know, it's a way to negotiate that seller down to get them to be a little bit more reasonable. And do it with logic, not just gut. And so, you know, with wholesalers that work with us, we give them this calculator. So it kind of kicks out the rehab numbers. If you don't, or you're out of state, and you guys, this calculator will be available too in our course down the road as well. But if you're local, you get it, and if you kind of partner up with us. So other things you can do to kind of get your rehab numbers figured out. You could bring a building inspector out there if this is new for you. You know, they're going to tell you what's wrong with it. Just give the investor an inspection report with a rough budget. You can have a contractor estimate it. I did that a lot back in the day when I was a wholesaler starting new, and the market was bad too, or not new, but after the market crashed and we were still wholesaling, what we had to do was eliminate risk for investors. Investors were freaked out by real estate. Everyone hated real estate from 2008. And so what we would do to wholesale is we bring in a contractor, get a bid out, and then let the investor know what they could get it fixed for to kind of mitigate risk, just to get them to buy. And again, going back to that point I made earlier, guys, investors do not buy when the market's bad. There will be dependable people who have been around forever like us, but most of the people leave. If it gets hard, people leave. So, really make sure you kind of figure out these middle numbers, or adding these extra resources. So having a contractor can help get a bid. Budget calculators. There's budget calculators online. We have ours. I like ours. It's pretty actual at that point. Or you can even keep it very simple of having like 20 items on a spreadsheet saying kitchen 10,000, bathroom 5,000, roof 10,000, and make it more basic, and then let the investor adjust. Your guys' budget doesn't need to be right. for wholesaling. You guys are giving them a snapshot. It is the investor's ultimate decision to make that purchase or not. The investor has agreed to you if they're buying that your number's right. What you don't want to do is offer a deal out that you worked on really hard with a bad number and no one wants it. It becomes stale and you never can sell it. So, and then also talk to real estate brokers. What kind of upgrades do you need to do? What is necessary to get that value out of it? So after you looked at the property, you got the details, you got the value, you got the budget, then you got to get into pro forma. Does your deal make sense or not? So inside your pro forma that you need, you guys should all have a calculator that you can input numbers in and go, yes, this is a deal or not. Also, this is going to kind of tell you what your rehab fee is. So like this flip calc that's on the screen right now, this is a property we did off market. We contracted the deal for $710,000. We assigned it for $740,000. We had 110 to 120 for the budget. The investor, we had a comp at $1,050,000. And then we know that the investor is going to buy that deal for a 13% cash on cash return, which is what our investors will buy at. So when we kind of factor all these things in the deal, we knew what we could wholesale it for before we even contracted it. So inside your pro forma, what you need to be under your purchase price, your rehab, you need to account for all your hold times, you guys, because when investors are buying these, they got to pay debt costs. That goes against the profit. So you may think they're making 75 grand, but it might only be 40. So know your numbers. You want to know what your lending fees are, or estimated kind of what the market fees are. And then you want to back out all your taxes, insurance, utilities, sales costs, and that's going to give you your anticipated net profit. This is so you don't, the reason you use performance, guys, is you kind of want to be able to guide an investor that, hey, this is a good deal, but you also don't want to go in and contract that deal too high, because then you got to renegotiate and try to make a minimal fee just to get the deal done, right? Like if you know your numbers, you're going in the deal right with eyes open. And if your eyes are open, then you can actually put the right deal together and you won't lose it. So now that we went over underwriting, right, guys, are kind of a basics of it. Like, how do you look at the deal? Things that you need to look at, the tools you need your budget sheets, you need a way to pull comps, and you need to be able to create, have a perform on it. How can we grow your business, or how can you grow your business? We've covered a lot of stuff tonight, guys. Again, this is kind of the basics 101 of wholesaling. The things that we offer, and you guys, this is for a local partnership program, is we do work with a ton of different local wholesalers. The reason they work with us is we're very dependable. If we tell you we are buying a deal, it is 100% closing if it's what you told us it is. If there's a messed up title issue, yeah, we're not closing. If you tell us it's got a foundation and doesn't have one, yeah, probably won't close. But if we walk that property and go through the whole thing, then at that point, it is 100% committed, ready to close. So what do we do in this partnership program? So we offer partnership program for local wholesalers only right now, guys, where we offer you what we use in our daily business to do those 100 to 150 deals a year. So the things that we offer, you come inside this partnership program, is you're going to get our purchase and sales. You're going to get our distressed person sale. You're going to get a regular person sale. You're going to get our title and escrow connections. Who are the people that close every one of our deals, that can handle assignment fees, that can handle your closing, they can handle your seller and buyer and not jeopardize that deal? I have lost at least 10 deals to bad title companies over the years. So make sure you have them at the right hands, or they can drop the ball, and then your fee that you've been working on, that deal you've been working on for 90, 120, maybe 6 months, is going to get lost. The other thing that we offer inside of our partnership program is we give you guys 24 to 40 hour underwriting on any deal that you drum up. So if you're going out, you say, hey, James, or you email in and say, hey, guys, we have an appointment here. The seller's saying roughly this. I don't have any photos. Can you give me a ballpark? We're going to send you as is comparables for what the value is as is, right? That's a big difference. That can give you a big jump on how to negotiate that seller down. We're going to give you a flip calc, and we're going to give you a strike price that we can pay at that point and what we can move it for. So you're going to know your numbers. You're going to have data. You're going to have information to help you negotiate that deal. We're going to provide you a seller list with phone numbers already on it. Okay, these are properties that we've targeted. They're highly probable that we are going to be aggressive buyers on. They can be development sites, they can be apartment buildings, they can be multifamily, they can be single family, fix and flip. We're going to provide you with the data list. We're going to give you agreements and disclosures to work with, you write paperwork and play, and then we're also going to give you a marketing kit of mailers, different types of templates to kind of get this thing done. What we need from you guys in this partnership. Oh, I didn't realize there's a video in there. I didn't even realize that had snuck in. So what this allows you to do, guys, is allows you to work smart. Wholesaling, if you're working with buyers and sellers, that's 50% of your time on both sides. You know, working with investors is just as hard as working with the buyers. They take as much time to find the right guys, or vice versa. So what we do is we give you the information. It allows you to do what you're good at doing. That's finding the opportunity. We'll get you the numbers in there, and then we do a partnership split with you guys on that one. The advantage of that is, you know, your margins up front, you know what we're going to pay. You can negotiate your own fees in there. You know, you have solid offer terms. You don't have to use a promissory note because we're going to put real cash behind you. Like if you call me and say, hey, we got a deal, you said you pay 700 for, we can get it, but we need 100 grand earnest money and release it to the seller after mutual. I'm going to do that. We're going to give you those advantages to get that deal locked up that you may not have otherwise. We're going to get you the underwriting. And because we're doing all the underwriting, we're getting you solid terms and we're handling the placement. That gives you 50 to 60% more times to do more deals. And the more you focus on sellers, the more deals you can get in for contracts to get done. So how that process works is, you know, what you guys would do if you're interested in the local wholesaler partnership program, you're going to get a survey after the fact. Fill out the survey. We're going to reach out to you, and then we'll talk to you about how we engage in that. We sign an agreement because you guys, we are giving you all of our company's information that we spend a lot of money on. We're going to sign up an agreement that you are going to give us exclusive right to the deals, the fee side, or the fee agreement at that point too, how we're going to do the splits on those, which are 50-50. And then from there, we're going to get going. You guys, to wholesalers properties, you don't need to do this, but if you want all the extra assistance, you do need to do this with us. There's lots of wholesaling companies out there that I buy, and I buy 95% of their deal. They got their own system, their own processes. If you're one of those guys, all we do is you call us, we'll give you a number on it. Whatever you negotiated below that, that's money in your pocket. I don't care how big your fee is. We paid, dude, I think I paid a couple guys. I mean, I know I just paid one guy 250 grand on a deal recently. That was like 5 months ago. And I paid 180,000 on another deal 9 months ago. We don't care how big your fee size is. And learn from people that do, not just go on social media and talk about it. Okay, because we're a very active shop in Washington. We're very active investors. We've been doing this a long time. So if you're not local, something that we do offer, and this will be coming out in the summer. We were going to be offering this spring, but you guys, we got a lot of stuff that we're building out for our companies this year. So we pushed it to the summer. Is we offer something called Project Wholesale. This is an 8-week crash course that's going to take this whole presentation and go very in depth on everything. So over the 8-week extensive course, we're going to so over the 8 weeks, it's 8 weeks consecutively. It's a 60-minute question and answer at the end. And not only that, you're going to get access to all our construction forms, purchase and sales, marketing materials, our ProjectRE Facebook group, which we're going to be posting all sorts of different updates, coaching tips, live calls, different types of our sales meetings can be streamed in there. So you guys can kind of watch what we're doing. During the 8 weeks, what's the core information that you're going to learn? The first, we're going to talk about intro to wholesaling. What is wholesaling? How to get started in that, what needs to go through your system set up. We did talk about the general people target. We're going to talk about how to scrub that list down to where you can get rid of 50% of the junk and work really smart. Investor 101, how to find the right investor, how to dig them up, how to lock them in, how to get them committed. We're going to talk about data, CRM, and sales funneling, a whole class on that. How do we do it? How do we sales funnel? How do we keep track of these leads? Also, you're going to get exclusive discounts to all of a bunch of CRM systems that, you're going to get anywhere between 10 to 20% off CRM systems by referrals. We're going to go over contracts, paper and forms, construction 101, underwriting 101, and then sales 101 at the very end, where we're going to be doing a lot of live sales training. I'm going to be taking live calls with people. We might have a couple of students kind of take some calls themselves, or we'll play some recordings at that time. So it's a very 8-week class. Materials that are it's a very in-depth 8-week class. It's an hour presentation, hour questions and answers. Then materials included in this are the purchase and sale. You're going to get our performa, our walkthrough forms, our construction budget sheets, discounts to CRM systems, car room discounts, mailing contacts, and postcards templates in there. So you guys, this alone, the materials is at least $10,000 worth of stuff. I mean, my construction contract alone cost me $3,000 to have made by my attorney. It has been revised numerous times over times. So you guys, you get a lot of information, and the core cost, guys, is $1,000. Our goal is really just to pay for the different stuff we got to put on, right? Like, it's not very expensive. We wanted to offer very low cost so we can get free information out. That is a passion for me, is to make sure people know and get educated. Nothing's worse than jumping into real estate, not knowing what you're doing, and getting booted. Because that did happen to me in 2008. So how do you contact us, guys? So after this, you're going to get a survey from us. In that survey, we're going to go over whether you have interest in that course at all. We'll keep in contact with you. If you're a local partnership person that you're interested in, you're going to get the survey. You're going to click yes, that I'm interested in that. Also, Brittany, my assistant, will be reaching out to you guys to see if you want to get interested in, if you're local, doing deals locally with us and getting set up on that platform. Or if you want to get going for the course and do the reservation, we'll announce the dates for that. And then you guys can register from there. Again, it's $1,000 for 8 weeks, guys. That's like $120 a class. It's nothing. So if you want to do that, by all means, hopefully I see you there. And then for more free information, if you don't want to pay for any of the course stuff and you just want more free information, check us out on our YouTube channel, ProjectRE. We do a ton of coaching and training on there. It's about construction, it's about investment, it's about buy and hold, it's wholesaling. I know we're posting a video of me live at a door that I randomly stopped at to kind of door knock the other day. My Instagram is jdainflips. Again, we post a lot of updates, a lot of different tips and sales in there. Our TikTok's ProjectRE, Facebook is ProjectRE, and then our core companies, guys, is Buck Buys Houses, Interest Funding, Heaton, Dainard. Check us all out online.